If you want all of your data in one place, if you want a single home for all of your entities, if you want to spend more time working and less time searching, you need the Intuit ERP. I know because I'm Damon John, and I run my growing business on Intuit Enterprise Suite, the AI native ERP that's powerful, painless, and proven. Learn more at intuit.com/ERP.
From pop culture to politics, this is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. A great day despite the fact that one of the leading backers of President Trump and his policy in making war on Iran, one of the big supporters of that war, is now criticizing President Trump. Why? Because he is allegedly, according to Mark Thiessen, seizing defeat out of the jaws of victory. How and why? We will get to that. And there is more where a conservative columnist is asking an uncomfortable question. Has Trump considered shutting the F up? That's an open question, and we will get to that as well on the Michael Medved Show. But first, breaking news. U.S. forces fired on and disabled 2 Iranian oil tankers this morning after exchanging fire with Iranian forces in the Strait of Hormuz overnight. The United Arab Emirates, meanwhile, reported another Iranian missile and drone attack on their territory. The attacks cast more doubt on a tenuous month-old ceasefire that the United States has insisted is still in effect. Washington is awaiting an Iranian response to the administration's latest proposal for a deal to end this war, to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and to roll back Tehran's disputed nuclear program. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in the midst of travel, he was obviously meeting at the Vatican, but the Secretary of State said he hopes to receive a serious offer from Iran later Friday. And by the way, it's a good thing if Iran notifies him about their latest negotiation proposal rather than the self-described Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. The U.S. military said Friday that its forces had disabled 2 Iranian tankers that were trying to breach an American blockade of Iran's ports. Hours earlier, the military said it thwarted attacks on 3 Navy ships and struck Iranian military facilities in the Strait. And then here, breaking news closer to home, ABC TV lashed out at Trump's FCC in a blistering filing accusing them of violating the First Amendment. And part of what they say in their filing is that some may dislike certain or even most of the viewpoints expressed on The View or similar shows. Such dislike, however, cannot justify using regulatory processes and government power to restrict these views. The government does not get to decide what shall be orthodox in politics, nationalism, religion, or other matters of opinion. That's a quote of a regulation. Or which ideas and beliefs are deserving of expression and consideration. And the danger is that the government will simply decide which perspectives to regulate and which to leave undisturbed. In fact, while the commission now questions the View's decades-long exemption, it has not expressed any inclination to apply a similar interpretation of the equal opportunities rule to other broadcasters, including the many voices, conservative and liberal, on broadcast radio. And as a broad array of voices, including many conservatives, have recognized, if the government is allowed to discriminate on the basis of viewpoint, in a Republican administration, there is little preventing it from doing so when and if the Democrats are in charge. This is a serious matter. And another serious matter has to do with the state of the war and where we are going with that war. The President of the United States is standing charged with mismanagement and squandering the Epic Fury success. This, according to Mark Thiessen, who is a former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush. He has been a big supporter of President Trump, supported him in all his campaigns, and supported his decision to go to war. In fact, he writes in a column in the Washington Post, President Donald Trump's decision to launch Operation Epic Fury will go down in history as one of the most courageous and important in my lifetime. Presidents of both parties declared that Iran could not have a nuclear weapon, but only Trump took decisive action to stop it. But how you finish a war, writes Mark Thiessen in the Washington Post, matters just as much as how you start one. And right now, Trump is in danger of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory with a deal that would give the battered Iranian regime a new lease on life. Trump says he holds all the cards, but Tehran disagrees. Why is that? Consider the events of the past few days from Iran's perspective, he writes. First, the president launched Project Freedom to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz and warned that if Iran dared to fire at American vessels, it would, quote, be blown off the face of the earth, unquote. Iran defied his warning, not only firing on a U.S. warship, but launching 12 ballistic missiles, 3 cruise missiles, and 4 drones at the United Arab Emirates. In response, the United States did nothing. If you were in Iran's shoes, writes Mark Thiessen, what would you think? You would perceive weakness. You would conclude that Trump's threats were bluster and that he is unwilling to resume the bombing campaign. You would decide that Trump is feeling political pressure from high gas prices, that the U.S. blockade of Iran in the Strait is backfiring on him, and that it is only a matter of time before he is forced to end that too. You would think that your ability to threaten the oil infrastructure of America's Persian Gulf allies is not only successfully deterring Trump from striking you again, but also preventing him from taking away your control of the strait. You would think that you, not Trump, have the cards. If anyone doubts that Iran is emboldened, writes Mark Thiessen, consider the Financial Times reports that Tehran has stepped up hangings of people accused over anti-government unrest, adding that the pace of hangings accelerated following a fragile ceasefire in the conflict. This comes after Trump publicly appealed to the regime to spare the lives of a group of female protesters. Far from being chastened, Iran's leaders are stepping up their campaign of domestic repression in a clear message of defiance to Trump. So, question is, what should Trump do? Simple, writes Mark Thiessen. Finish what he started. Resume Project Freedom, making clear that Iran will not be allowed to control the strait or threaten ships passing through it. If Iran fires at the U.S. or threatens the energy infrastructure of our Gulf allies again, retaliate by striking Iran's energy infrastructure on Karg Island, through which over 90% of Iran's oil passes. If Iran still won't capitulate, Trump can launch a final barrage of strikes, eliminate all the targets he set at the start of the war, declare victory, and then begin covert operations to arm the Iranian people to overthrow the regime. Politically, the only way the Iran war can hurt Trump, says Mark Thiessen, is if he does not bring the conflict to a decisive victory. While most Americans did not support the decision to go to war, polls show that they do want the U.S. to prevail. The new Harvard-Harris CAPS poll, registered voters, shows that supermajorities support Trump's objectives in Iran. What does that mean? We'll get to that.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
And we were sharing the viewpoint of Mark Thiessen, who is a very strong Republican columnist. He has been consistently pro-Trump and has been a big backer of Trump's decision to go to war with Iran. And he writes in a syndicated column, politically, the only way the Iran war can hurt Trump is if he does not bring the conflict to a decisive victory. And pointing out that while most Americans did not support the decision to go to war, polls show they do want the U.S. to prevail. And then he cites a new Harvard CAPS Harris poll of registered voters and finds out that supermajorities support Trump's objectives in Iran. 71% say it is essential that Iran gives up the right to enrich any uranium and turns over the enriched uranium it already has on hand. 74% of our fellow citizens agree that Iran must give up control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's 74%. 78% think Iran must stop executing protesters. And 79% agree that Iran must stop supporting terror proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas. 66% say that Trump should insist on all of these points, all of them, and not settle for less. In other words, Americans want to win. The only thing that Americans like less than war and high gas prices is enduring them for nothing. But to deliver that victory, President Trump needs to show the Iranian regime that it doesn't have the leverage it thinks it does, and it can't negotiate a deal that lets the regime off the mat. If he does, he will squander the opportunity to secure one of the greatest national security achievements of any modern president. But let us hope that that optimistic outcome comes forward and comes true. But that outcome will not be advanced by President Trump simply trying to misstate, to lie about reality. For instance, this is clip 20 coming up. President Trump was outside the White House and speaking to a reporter about gas prices. Here is what he had to say, clip 20.
Are you considering maybe going back to that now that gas prices are more than $4?
It could. Well, no, gas prices have come down today. Have you looked? They've come down very substantially today. The gas prices, you know what's happened today? Gas prices are way down and the stock market is way up today. So gas prices have come down, and I saw today that they broke negatively. In other words, to our positive position, they broke our way very substantially.
All fact checks show this is completely false. The gas prices climbed to an average of $4.56 a gallon today, now up nearly 60% since the start of the war. And Jeremy Steiner, pride of Hillsdale College, filled up his gas tank yesterday. And his response was, having filled up his gas tank, $100, WTF, exclamation point. Meanwhile, another question to Trump. He was asked, why focus on all of these projects? He was talking to reporters about the big, beautiful ballroom. But why focus on all these projects right now, just as gas prices are soaring? President Trump did not respond well to that question. This is clip 19.
You are here against the backdrop of the war in Iran.
Yeah.
Why focus on all these projects right now?
You know why? Because I want to keep our country beautiful and safe. Beautiful also. This place was a disgusting place. It was Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and we had a terrible disgust. I don't know. You probably don't see dirt, but I do. And you walk down this pond. If you would have walked down, they'll tell you better than anybody. They had to take 11 or 12 truckloads of garbage out of that lake, out of that water, and it sat there for years like that. And that's not what our country is about. Our country is about beauty, cleanliness, safety, great people, not a filthy capital.
What is the status?
That's such a stupid question you ask. We're fixing up the reflecting pond to the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, and you say, why are you fixing it up? Because you can understand dirt maybe better than I can, but I don't allow it. This is one of the worst reporters. She's with ABC Fake News, and she's a horror show. She's saying, why would you bother fixing this up? Why would I bother taking 11 or 12 truckloads of filth out of the water in front of the Lincoln Monument? That's what made our country great. Beauty made our country. People made our country great. A question like that is a disgrace to our country.
It's really, she was a horror show because she asked the question about actually at this particular moment trying to clean out the reflecting pool beside the Lincoln Memorial. Well, let's go back to the original question she asked. Was it really that offensive? Here was her question.
You are here against the backdrop of the war in Iran. Why focus on all these projects right now?
You know why? Because I want to keep our country beautiful and safe. Beautiful.
Why focus right now? I want to keep our country beautiful and safe. Okay. President Trump also says that concerning the beautiful new ballroom, which is nearby, adjacent to the White House, this is what it will bring to the country. This is clip 15.
So this will be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world, and it'll be the safest ballroom by far anywhere in the world, and you won't have a fiasco like you did Saturday night 2 weeks ago.
Are you expected to have the Qatari jet by July 4th?
By July 4th, yeah, we think we're going to have it. Yeah, we do think we're going to have it. Thank you very much for the advice.
They're going to have it all built, the big, beautiful ballroom by July 4th. I wonder what the betting odds are on that. Meanwhile, the administration going after Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. Senator Kelly at a press conference had a response to the administration's moves. We will get to that and get to a Democrat giving some respectful remarks about Marco Rubio. That and more coming up on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, Senator Mark Kelly is under assault by the Justice Department of the United States. What is his crime? He issued a video where, together with other Democratic members of Congress, people who had served in our military, he made a reminder to the current people wearing the uniform that they had no obligation to follow orders that might be illegal, that might be improper, unsuitable, and violating the Constitution or the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that would somehow be inappropriate for people in uniform to do. But in terms of going after him and prosecuting him, perhaps for treason, which is a capital offense in the Constitution. Senator Kelly, at a press conference, had this message to the acting Attorney General, Attorney General Blanche, and to President Trump. This is clip 18.
They're trying to send a message to other retired veterans and really to all of us. If you say something that the president or this administration does not like, they're going to come after you. The president is trying to silence us. And I can't think of anything that's more un-American. Just like these folks behind me, I signed up to serve our country and protect our freedoms, including the freedom of speech. Most of us joined to be part of something bigger than ourselves, to protect and serve the country we love. I know Donald Trump doesn't understand that, and he doesn't understand us. This administration has bullied and coerced the press, private companies, and universities. The list goes on. But in this case, the president and the Secretary of Defense picked the wrong guy. Because when it comes to our most fundamental rights, I will not back down.
Okay, this is obviously going to give some attention and generate some support for Senator Mark Kelly, who has this extraordinary background anyway of being a decorated veteran of combat and also being an astronaut very successfully with the U.S. space program. He is the senator from Arizona. He is being increasingly mentioned as a presidential possibility. Meanwhile, Paul Begala, who is famous for having worked with a previous presidential possibility, he was part of the original Clinton team that got President Clinton into the White House. He spoke about Marco Rubio, who has been getting a great deal of exposure, particularly for stepping in for the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt. She is on maternity leave. She is about to give birth. I don't believe that's happened yet. But rather than canceling the normal press briefing, Rubio volunteered to do it. He isn't doing enough as National Security Advisor and as Secretary of State and as the new emissary to the Vatican in their meeting with Pope Leo. It's not enough. He also did a truly impressive job answering questions from the White House press corps. And that led CNN's Paul Begala to comment on Rubio. This is 17.
The place to which he has come now seems like a markedly different one in a way that shows perhaps he could be a threat to Democrats in a presidential race.
As a Democrat, I'd much rather run against J.D. Vance than Marco Rubio. Okay, J.D., I'm sorry, he's charmless. He's an oaf. He's not getting any better. He got into Yale, I bet you, on some kind of hillbilly DEI or something. But he doesn't impress me. Bring it on. Marco, very different. And believe me, he's running. My partner, Carville, has this wonderful saying, maybe not appropriate for afternoon television. Running for president.
You have a bottle opener in your pocket.
I do.
Running for
president. It's a popener.
Okay.
Let's just be clear about that.
I'm sorry.
Carville
says what?
Running for president is like having sex. You don't do it just once and say, I'm good, no more. He's running again.
Okay.
That wasn't appropriate for afternoon television.
Okay, again, given the fact that the Vatican is definitely pro-natalist, they're pro-giving birth and building population. By the way, they will be happy about news that I was unaware of, and maybe you were too, but the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, who's 28 years old, welcomed her second child, a baby girl named Viviana, who will be known as Vivi for short. She welcomed the new baby with husband Nicholas Riccio on May 1st. Oh, so he's already in our world for a week. She is already in our world for a week. She made history as the first White House press secretary to give birth while in office. Leavitt is taking maternity leave for an unspecified time, but I would imagine that she would be able to call on Marco Rubio again to pinch hit for her. Meanwhile, there was an explanation by General Keith Kellogg, who's a military expert voice on Fox News. He was speaking on Iran, and one of the reasons that we are having such a tough and impatient time getting a response from the Iranian regime on the peace proposal, the settlement proposal that the United States had submitted and that President Trump continues to push. General Kellogg spoke about one of the problems with dealing with that Iranian regime. This is clip 16.
Yeah, well, I think there was, Trey said earlier, two options. One with a pen. I think it's filled with disappearing ink. And the other is the operation can continue. And I think we have to look at what they're doing. They've got a mosaic defense strategy. That's what they call it, where they've decentralized their command and control. So we really don't know who's in control of the Republican Guards organizations in these 31 different districts who keep eliminating. But Vahidi is in charge of the Republican Guards. He's a fanatic. These guys are nuts. The only guy that's reasonable is President Trump and his team. And I don't see where we're seeing reasonableness from the other side. I'm one of those, and I advocate very strongly. I'm not the president. That's, I understand Article 2, Section 2, who's the commander in chief. But that's why I've consistently said you've got to go someplace like take Cargill and put a provisional government in charge, do something. You got the National Council for Resistance for Iran with Maryam Rajavi out there. She's a Democratic populist. She could actually lead that. I wouldn't put Shah Pahlavi in there, the Shah's former son. But you're going to keep doing this with somebody like Rashi, their foreign minister, who wrote a book on negotiations, and it's right in his playbook. You're seeing the playbook play itself out.
And let us hope that there is some surprise play, a Hail Mary play, or is it a Hail Mohammed play by the Iranian regime that does bring some sort of settlement and an end to this tumultuous and difficult war, which is not, unfortunately, over or close yet. We shall see. Meanwhile, what about the relationship between Pope and President? What is it that actually pulled President Trump's trigger and got him to condemn the Pope, the leader of the largest religious institution on earth? We will get to that with Paul Kengor of Grove City College coming up on the Medved Show. And it is always a pleasure and a distinct honor to welcome back to the show my friend Paul Kengor, who is a professor of political science at Grove City College in Grove City, Pennsylvania. He is also the driving force behind the outstanding Institute for Faith and Freedom at Grove City, which just held a remarkably successful celebration of the 250th anniversary of the American Republic, and I was honored to be part of it. He is also the author of several books about the papacy, and particularly about the alliance between President and Pope in the person of Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul II. They were collaborators, they were partners, they were jointly involved in winning the Cold War. Question on the table is President Trump claims that he is a defender of conservative values and of the Republican Party. Why is it so different, the relationship that he has but with Pope Leo XIV? It's actually, it's not because of differences between Pope Leo and Pope John Paul II. They have lots of similarities, don't they?
Well, I mean, the difference really is entirely the president. And I know the Trump people hearing this will be screaming right now when they hear this, because I hear from them all day long, Michael. One guy called me yesterday and said, tell this Pope to stick out of the president's business, right? And all this stuff. And it's unbelievable. And I follow this very carefully because I wrote a 400-page book on Pope Leo. So every day I follow everything he says from the Vatican. And the first time that he directly criticized Donald Trump was when Donald Trump, 2 days after Easter Sunday, by the way, Easter Sunday morning at 8:03 a.m., he leveled his Truth Social post where he said, open the effing Strait of Hormuz, you crazy B words. You will be burning in hell. Praise be to Allah, Donald Trump. That was his Sunday morning message. And then 2 days later, Tuesday morning, he said, an entire civilization will be ended tonight, never to be brought back again. I hope it doesn't happen, but it probably will. And at that point, the Pope, who has a moral responsibility to speak up at that point, Trump had really forced his hand, said statements about ending entire civilizations of people are truly unacceptable. And he didn't even say the T word, didn't even say Trump. That and other things led Trump to eventually explode on the Pope, who he called liberal, weak, all kinds of, in a truly unprecedented, I can tell you, I mean, never before in the history of the presidency or papacy was there ever a statement like that. And despite what AI says, Pope Leo hasn't even declared the war an unjust war. He's made statements about peace and laying down arms and also, despite what Donald Trump has said, the Pope doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Trump has said that so many times now, and his believers are believing it, that the head of the Roman Catholic Church had to come out a couple of days ago, and he said he didn't want to get in a debate with Donald Trump, but he said, we're against nuclear weapons. We don't want the Iranians to have a nuclear. This is just classic Trump stuff, and it's led to a blow up with the Pope, and it's really quite ugly and unfortunate.
Well, what President Trump said in one of his many, many posts on Truth Social, he said that the Pope should get his act together as Pope, use common sense, stop catering to the radical left, and then added, I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person.
Right.
How liberal is he, Paul Kengor?
He's not liberal at all. He's more conservative than Donald Trump and has been for a long time. In fact,
and a longer time than Donald Trump has been conservative or Republican.
And in fact, late 1970s, when Donald Trump was hanging out in discos, and into the 1980s when Trump was, I'm sorry, I don't mean this to sound mean, but had, many relationships and probably extramarital relationships and several marriages, and was a libertine playboy who supported abortion. Robert Francis Prevost was creating the pro-life club at Villanova University and walking in the first marches for life in D.C. Donald Trump is liberal on LGBTQ issues, especially same-sex marriage, homosexuality. Robert Francis Prevost called it a sin. He's against all that stuff. The only area really that he disagrees with Trump that I could see is the war with Iran. And people would be like, well, what about immigration? Read my piece for American Spectator on immigration. Pope Leo has mentioned it twice during his papacy. And both times he said, nations have the right to establish borders and decide who comes in, where, when, and when. And he also said, but if someone's been here 15 or 20 years, they shouldn't be mistreated. They need to be treated with dignity. Nothing radical at all. He's not a liberal. He's a conservative, and also he's a Republican. The Pope is a Republican. He's voted repeatedly in the Republican primaries every 2 years in Illinois in the 2010s after he came back from the Vatican. He even voted absentee ballot from the Vatican in 2024. Michael, he might have even voted for Donald Trump. All right?
Well, it sounds like he probably did.
Yeah.
What do you hear about the meeting with Marco Rubio that the Pope had that apparently was extended to more than 2 hours? What do you think that will be able to do to patch up this division?
Well, it probably went really well. And you and I are speaking on the 1 year anniversary, actually, ironically, of the election of Leo. And it was about a week and a half after that that he was officially installed on May 18th as Pope. The day after that, May 19th, which was a Monday, one of his first meetings was with Marco Rubio and J.D. Vance. And they got along great. In fact, surely the three of them said that none of them could imagine sitting there in that room a year earlier. So he gets along with Rubio very well, got along with Vance very well. And I'm sure he'd get along with Donald Trump very well, too, because he's a very good listener. He's a very charitable guy. He's not one to, call people names and cast aspersions at them if they disagree with him. So I imagine that probably went very well. And hopefully a lot of it we don't know the details of, because I bet Marco Rubio probably said to him, Holy Father, I'm really sorry for some of what's happened, and I would like to go to confession. You don't mind at this point. But Rubio probably patched up a lot of Trump's doing what Trump did. And I noticed that 2 days ago, Trump had said 5 or 6 times, including to Hewitt, the quote, the Pope thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. I think 2 days ago he said something like, the Pope seems to think it's okay. So that, I guess Trump is being a bit more careful in his language. But he does, and he doesn't think it. Leo doesn't think it's any more. Doesn't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon any more than John Paul II wanted Saddam to have a nuclear weapon when John Paul II called the George W. Bush's war with Iraq unjust. And by the way, Donald Trump was even harsher. He said Bush lied about WMDs. But that's another issue.
It is another issue. In terms of President Trump's sending out an image of himself in garb and with an aura of Jesus Christ, has the Pope made any comment about that?
He didn't. I know that the 3 bishops, the liberal bishops on 60 Minutes, who really launched Donald Trump into orbit with that Truth Social post, Supich in D.C., said the Trump posts were sickening. It's probably referring to that. It's probably referring to the Tuesday threat to annihilate all civilization, basically wipe out 93 million Iranians. And I know people would say, well, come on, he wasn't really going to do that. Well, the Pope doesn't know that. And the Pope said mere statements like that are unacceptable, which they are. And that statement on that Tuesday morning had a lot of us on pins and needles that whole day wondering what's going to happen that night, especially after Trump's Easter Sunday message, calling them crazy B words and telling them they were going to rot in hell.
Yes, and why did he say, and praise be to Allah?
I don't know. I guess sarcasm, maybe?
Well, it's still a mystery, but mysteries are solved. Mysteries are solved by Paul Kengor. You can read his material at michaelmedved.com. Thanks always, Paul, for the depth of knowledge and understanding and sympathy all around from Paul Kengor, making more contributions to this greatest nation on God's green earth.